Can we call the meeting to order, please? Just before we start, I would like to make a short statement, if I could. On Friday evening, a bus carrying the Humboldt Broncos junior hockey team was involved in a tragic accident near Tilsdale, Saskatchewan. It's claimed the lives of 15 people, with 14 others seriously injured. This is an extremely unfortunate event and be a difficult time, particularly for the families, the citizens of Humboldt, and all Canadians. Therefore, I would ask everyone to join us in a moment of silence as an expression of our deepest condolences to the family, friends, and everyone associated with the Humboldt Broncos team. This is truly a tragic accident. Just prior to that, please note that for those who want to make their personal condolences known, there is a book of condolences at Jones Funeral Home. Please join me for a moment's reflection. To more mundane things, we have an agenda in front of us. Is there a motion for acceptance? Moved by Deputy Mayor Aitken, seconded by Councillor Tower. All those in favor? Aye. Approved? Oh, sorry, anyway, contrary minded? Approved. Item 3 is question period. Are there questions from the audience?
Good evening. My name is Meredith Fisher. I'm here to ask you, Mayor and Council, if you received the email that I sent you at the end of last week. That was a copy of the letter that was sent to the university after the second meeting regarding the Windsor Hall project and the use of Rectory Lane. And if you've had a chance to read it.
Councillors, all received it and have looked? Yes?
Okay.
They've all received it, yes.
Yes. Do you have any questions at this point?
If I do, I'll contact you personally.
Will I hear from council with some kind of a plan? I know Dwayne certainly was at the meeting, and I hope maybe he's had a chance to speak with you about the things that will be unfolding on Rectory Lane in the next, oh gosh, sounds like 6 years or so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, we move to disclosure of interests. Are there any interests to disclose on this agenda? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you. I'll exit the chamber for the vote on the paving contract.
Thank you. Just make a note of that. Are there any other disclosures of interest? Okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We move on to minutes. Item number 5, regular council meeting of March the 12th, 2018, on page 3 of your package. Councillor O'Neill moves, seconded by Councillor Evans. Adoption. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Special meeting of April the 3rd, 2018 is on page 11 of your package. Moved by Councillor Mitten, seconded by Councillor Tower. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Special meeting of closed in camera of April the 3rd, which is on page 16. Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Councillor Evans. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. I have no business arising from the minutes. Anybody else? No? Okay. So item number 7, Southeast Regional Services, usually done by the mayor, but mayor was not in attendance, so the deputy mayor will speak to this item.
Thank you, Your Worship. I I attended the Southeast Regional Service Commission meeting on behalf of the mayor on the last Tuesday of last month. There are a few items that came up that I'd like to report on. I'd first like to thank the mayor for sending me to a meeting that in Moncton that starts at 6:30, and I was back in Sackville at 7:30, so I appreciate that. The RDMO, the meeting was, we were supposed to get a report, but the meeting was scheduled after the board meeting, so there was nothing coming forward on that just yet. However, I do see from the report of the tourism manager that he did attend the meeting, so if I might ask him for just a couple words on what happened at that meeting.
Certainly, thank you, Councillor Aitken, Your Worship and Council. It was a presentation or introduction to the person who will be facilitating the next step in the process. So it was just generally a discussion about what would be the next steps, and then it was decided that the next steps would be, pardon me, meetings within each municipality of people who were involved in marketing, or had a sense of marketing tourism, to find out what their needs were, and then that will be kind of coalesced into another report. So that's where we are right now.
Thank you. The board accepted the terms of reference for two committees, and they sound like they're almost the same thing, but I'm assured they're not. One is the Southeast Recreational Advisory Committee, who will sort of coordinate the recreational assets in the area. It's a committee of 6 to 10 people, one board member, and the others on the committee apparently are by application, so if anyone's interested in applying, I have an application. And they say one of their main duties will be dealing with trails in the area. And then there's a Trails Council, which is for trails development. And again, one board member and 6 to 10 interested or people with expertise in trail management. The final item was a natural asset management presentation and sort of scheme. There's an outfit called the Smart Prosperity Institute out of the University of Ottawa, and they paired up with the Municipal Natural Asset Initiative to work with the Regional Service Commission on essentially will kick in for $35,000, and they got an application into the Environmental Trust Fund for that money. And this is to get about $250,000 in-kind contribution from this Prosperity Institute to look at what they call natural assets in the community, which are essentially what value you would place on the trees and streams and all that other sort of non-man-made stuff. So that'd be worked out over the next few months, I think. And then finally, there was a motion passed on the siting of antennas in the area, which had been apparently a point of controversy before, but has now been passed. So.
Any questions on the report? The valuing of the natural assets is an interesting one, and I like to see how that unfolds. It'll be interesting to see if it becomes part of our financial statements as well, as we try to find a market value for things that we manage. Yeah, can we tax them, right? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. This apparently has been pursued by the town of Gibsons in British Columbia to start out with just sort of a water control study and then expanded into lots of other things. And this is the second go-around of these sorts of initiatives, and it's the first one to happen in Eastern Canada, so the Southeast was part of it. So.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? No? Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. We move to planning. Ms. Bickford.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll start my planning session tonight with first the public hearing for Robson Avenue, and then once that concludes, then I'll move on to the monthly planning and development report. So as I've said, tonight's the public hearing for property rezoning request from highway commercial to institutional on Robson Avenue. The entire property highlighted in gray was originally what was proposed, but only a portion of it is proposed to be rezoned to institutional. So the area that's identified as the black hatched area would be the portion that we're looking at changing. The remainder of the property, of course, would remain highway commercial. And of course, I left out the important part, that the reason why it's being requested to be changed to institutional is for the construction of an ambulance service from that location. So under our municipal plan policy, we do have policies that encourage institutional uses permitted throughout the town, and provided that they satisfy the requirements of the zoning bylaw. Under the current zoning, highway commercial, retail uses and service uses aimed at the traveling public are what's permitted. Ambulance service doesn't fall under this, which is triggering the institutional rezoning to allow that institutional use. This is an overview of the zoning in the area. So everything that's highlighted as gray is the highway commercial zoning presently. The orange is the industrial zone, and the R1 would be the purple color. You will see that there's a institutional one already in close proximity, and that's the daycare property, highlighted in red. And the boxed red area is approximately the location of where the proposed rezoning for this particular application would go. This is an aerial image so that you can get the placement of some of the buildings in the area. You can see the Tantramar gas, as well as the RV and the vet clinic and the hotel. The red star is indicating again that general proximity of where the ambulance would be located. During the subdivision process, which is happening at the same particular time as this request, you'll see that the town has been able to secure a municipal service easement, which is about 10 meters wide. That is the area highlighted in blue on this particular screen, as well as the red line that you see is the current flood limit mapping of that's been adopted under the zoning bylaw. This is the proposed site plan for the property. So the building is approximately 60 feet by 53 feet in size. It is a 2-bay garage, ambulance garage, and it does meet the parking requirements and the setback requirements of the zoning. These are the typical building elevations that you'll see. On the left-hand side is the front and rear below it, and then on the right-hand side of the screen would be the two side elevations of the building. Trying to give you an idea of where it is in relation to out in the site. It's hard to identify it just because of the angles of the street, but it's approximately in this location. This is looking down from Cattail down Robson Avenue, and this is the reverse, so looking up Robson Avenue towards Cattail, and you'll see the animal hospital, which it's directly behind that. And again, just another view, the left-hand side is the animal hospital, and this is your general view that you can see the other businesses on the opposite side of Cattail from this screen. The town of Sackville is also currently working on, or has been working on the Exit 506 study. This is the proposed conceptual plan that's come out of that particular request, or out of that particular study. Couple items that are identified in that is the realignment of Robson Avenue, parking at the rear of structures, as well as limiting access off Cattail Ridge. The document does support the introduction of institutional uses as well, and it does propose a maximum setback of 20 feet. This particular ambulance service is proposing a 50-foot setback. However, when you look at the setbacks along Robson, the current buildings are more in line with this, with the 50-foot setback, which would create that unified streetscape on that side of the street. So the next screen, you'll kind of see the yellow is the overlay of what that plan would look like on the current image out there. So the yellow lines being the realignment of the road network, and the yellow blocks would be those proposed structures that they had shown on the plan. That red dashed line that you would see would be where the proposed setback would be for Robson, according to the ambulance service, which would be the 50-foot setback along there. And of course, that red line would indicate the property boundary of where the ambulance service would go. So this particular case would still allow the Cattail Ridge to follow that 20-foot front yard maximum setback and having a separate established line along Robson Avenue. So the Southeast Planning Review and Adjustment Committee are required to review proposals of this nature. They have reviewed it and are recommending the rezoning request subject to the draft bylaw. And this is the proposed bylaw amendment. It identifies that a portion of the property would be rezoned from highway commercial to institutional and would establish the maximum front yard setback of 50 feet for the ambulance service. And it would, of course, have the attached schedule identifying that particular area that's being rezoned, so that we're only rezoning the portion affected by the ambulance at this time. Under the Community Planning Act, we are required to hold a public hearing of objections when we're considering rezoning requests, to give the public the opportunity to speak for or against the proposed amendment. In this particular application, we have submitted ads on our town website as well as on the Southeast, setting tonight as a public hearing. We've also circulated notification to neighbors within 100 meters and also placed an ad in the newspaper. So at this point is where I would turn back over to the mayor to open to the public.
Thank you. So this is, as Ms. Bickford said, this is the opportunity to weigh in on your views on this, this proposed rezoning. So if anybody has any, please step up, identify yourself, and let us know what you think.
Okay, since nobody else came forward, Wendy Alder, so Mayor and Council. I'm speaking in favor of this development, but I do have a couple questions. Last fall, Council wouldn't reconsider a development plan that I had proposed at the time until a study was performed at the location. So the study's now been performed, but it's my understanding that Council hasn't accepted it yet or done anything with it. So my question is, and I know you're not, I guess you're not voting on this necessarily tonight, but my question is, you didn't want to continue with any development at that exit until the study was done and approved and there was a long-term plan put in place. So I'm wondering what the next steps are. If you take this to vote, will you be making a decision on the long-term plan before that happens? Because there was concern about the Robson that comes out to Cattail and the intersection, which Lori just talked about, and the realignment and that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering if those things would be taken into consideration before you would move forward with this.
Okay. I'm going to turn to Mr. Burke, but at the last meeting, we adopted the vision of the document, but not the plan itself. We asked staff to prepare a framework of how that would be implemented. Maybe I could ask Mr. Burke if you could add some detail to that.
Yeah, excuse me, thank you, Your Worship, members of council. I guess we have kind of two processes that are ongoing. One is the zoning bylaw amendment, and the second is the Exit 506 study. So as we indicated at the meeting last week, that part of the first part of that process is for council to adopt or buy into the vision, so to speak, of what the Exit 506 plan suggests. If that's council's desire, we would then move forward with an implementation plan, which is, quite complex. There's public sector investment, private sector investment, capital budget issues that we would need to be worked through as part of our overall budget program. And then there's also a series of suggested changes that would require the assistance at the Southeast Regional Service Commission. So, you know, I don't want to speak for Ms. Bigford, but I know she's worked with the developer on kind of walking through this particular development through the process, and at the same time being mindful that we have a plan in front of us. So I think she's done her due diligence to ensure that the plan that's before you tonight is consistent, and I guess it certainly meets the spirit of what the Exit 506 study is suggesting.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Ask one last time. Are there any other questions of council? Okay, thank you. Well, that concludes the public hearing portion. Ms. Bickford, I believe you have other items?
So as part of our monthly report, I'll just highlight a couple things. There were 2 building permits issued in the month of March for a total construction value of $51,000. This time last year, we had 5 permits issued and a total of, I see there's a mistake in the report already, that there should have been a total of 6 permits issued to date with a construction value of $51,000, and I question the $51,000, so I will check that with and return to council on that one. So to compare to last year, there was 5 permits at this point with a total construction value of $244,000. Construction values change depending on the types of developments that we have, so they're hard to do a direct comparison, but I would suggest that permit numbers are at least consistent with what they normally are. As I've already presented, the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee did hear this particular proposal or the Robson Avenue rezoning request at their last meeting, and they did recommend it to council. We've also been working towards our file retention and disposal program. We have a lot of files within the Southeast Regional Service Commission offices that predate even the current structure of today, so dating back to the Tantramar planning days. So we're kind of looking at minimizing the volume of material that's kept on site and following the various retention schedules and forwarding any particular information that's required to be forwarded on to the provincial archives as well. Deputy Mayor Aiken touched on the antenna siting protocol that was adopted. I can give a little bit more detail on that. So this is essentially communication towers within the Southeast region. And what tends to happen, it is a federal jurisdiction as to the location of these towers. However, they are required to seek consultation with the local land use authority during the process. We had formerly had a company that this was outsourced to, that they would review it and then present it to us. This is simply just doing it in-house now, so we would be encouraging early consultation with the sites and preferably during the location time of selection, so that we are choosing sites that are applicable. We'd also be, as part of this document, proposing that if a tower can be co-located, then they have to co-locate rather than putting multiple towers within close proximity to each other. And of course, showing to the municipal staff that they are capable of meeting all the necessary health regulations and all the other ones that come along with it, NAV Canada as well. And my final item that I would have would be that we have received a rezoning request for a portion of the property located on, it fronts on, sorry, it fronts on Main Street and York Street. And the portion would be rezoned from institutional to mixed use. The purpose of this is that when the original rezoning took place from that property, it was only a portion of it was changed because the boundaries of the property were being determined at the same time. As a result, a portion of it still remains institutional, which is not reflective of the current ownership, which is private individual at this time. It is within the downtown business district, which does support mixed-use development and development in the core of the town as well. So I do also have a couple of motions as well on that, on this particular item tonight, but if there's any questions regarding the report, I can.
Any questions on the planning report? Councillor Finney?
Lori, if, for instance, this doesn't go through to rezone that small piece of property for them to build, they can still build, correct?
In the particular last request that I was just talking about? Yes. That they can.
36 units, right?
They could, it would be how they would have to develop it according to the zoning, so any higher density development would have to happen on the portion that's mixed use, and how that would look in the field would be different. There'd be larger parking. Part of this particular proposal was to have underground parking within the proposed building, so they would have to show parking elsewhere on the site.
But what I'm asking is, the fact is that if this little piece doesn't get changed, that will reduce the number of units they want to build? Because they won't have, without that piece, they won't be able to turn around and develop? Am I correct? It's going to be a smaller development. They're going to still be able to develop anyway, even if that doesn't get changed?
They could still do some form of development. The amount of units and everything, they still have to follow the zoning requirements. So depending on how many, usually what the biggest identifier would be parking spaces. So parking spaces would have to be shown, so it could result in a larger parking lot having to be located on the site. Whereas if, as the proposal goes as is, it would have the parking within the building itself, so therefore you wouldn't see an increased parking area. You would see more of a building footprint.
One of my main concerns is the fact that actually the main entrance and exit is going to be York Street. Is it not a concern of the Planning Commission that actually that's congested now? I go there quite often. I have people telling me they won't drive to go to Service New Brunswick because there's no place to park down that way. So, and I look at the fact of actually even myself going in and out of there, it's dangerous. So is that not a concern to the Planning Commission or the PRAC or whoever it was that made the recommendation?
Okay, well, I'll start by saying that that particular application did not go before the PRAC yet. It's at the early stages, so council would have to pass a resolution as to consider and set the rezoning process in place. At that point, it would go before the Planning Review Committee, and they would make the recommendation back to council. In the initial staff review of it, we don't have any limitations surrounding those exits. And given the particular layout of the property, that would be from my end where I would direct traffic towards as the most favorable location on that particular site. I want to say you asked another question, but yeah.
So, thank you.
Any other questions on the report? Deputy Mayor, you have motion?
Thank you, Worship. I move the council give first reading in name only to bylaw number 244E, a bylaw to amend bylaw number 244, Town of Sackville zoning bylaw.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Evans.
Just for clarification, this is the one on York Street or the one on Robson?
This is the one on Robson Avenue.
I always run the risk of having inappropriate comments anyway, but as long as I know what I'm talking about. Our plan and bylaw support this rezoning request, and so that's a strong argument in favor of doing this. And I think we all agree that the current location for the ambulance is not a good one. My question and concern has to do with some documents that were circulated to council about dealing with the flooding, floodplain, and the flood map. During the term of the last council, we adopted the 8.9 meter flood map. David Liskey, who has some expertise in this field, has indicated to us that a 10-meter flood mat might be more appropriate, and so I have a couple of questions about that later. But it's my understanding, if somebody wants to develop some property in the floodplain, the Planning Commission is obliged or does warn them of that fact. There are some limitations about how the property can be developed, not very much, but they warn them about that. In this case, following up on a question I asked at the last meeting, the applicant for the rezoning request is not Ambulance New Brunswick. And so if that developer is told of the potential flood risk, whatever it is, that doesn't necessarily get back to Ambulance New Brunswick. And so what I'm wondering is there a way that we can formally somehow say, we want you to know so that you can't come back to us if there is a problem subsequently with flooding or islanding, if, you know, for example, an ambulance couldn't get out of that spot. So that's, the question is about the fact that Ambulance New Brunswick is not the applicant, so they will not be warned, is one question. And the other one is, if council wanted to adopt a different flood map, is it ours? Is it pertaining to Sackville, or is it a regional thing? The planning services are regional now, so that's the second question. And then if it is up to us, what is the process involved in doing that? I'm not suggesting we do it now, but.
Okay. So to just kind of talk first about the limitations around floodplain development, we do have regulations within the zoning bylaw, and we have adopted a flood limit map as part of the zoning bylaw as well. Within that particular, within the particular regulations, it talks about certain developments not being allowed to occur within the flood limit, or as well as certain openings within the building not being able to be, so, you know, all doors have to be 8.9 meters plus a certain number of inches above that flood level. So there are some regulations in there that do control development within that designated area. It is a flood limit that was adopted by the town of Sackville. So it is yours, and it's based on numerous studies and projections over factoring in climate change and the dike elevation, and also natural water as well. So council would be, if they felt that 8.9 meter wasn't reflective of the risk level, then they could undertake the process to amend the zoning bylaw to change it. However, as part of that process, we would also look at the impact that would have on the town as well. So the second part about what I think is the third part, yeah. Over the ambulance service, at present time, the zoning bylaw has established the 8.9 meter elevation. This particular development is not within that 8.9 meter, it falls outside. So within that, they're not subject to any additional flood restrictions. The map that was circulated would have been one that is above and beyond what is actually adopted at current time.
Follow up. The concern would be the islanding effect, so that if the ambulance was going to serve the town, Bridge Street would be flooded with the current map. And that's what I'm thinking, is that, are they aware, and I maybe hope by asking this question publicly that they will be, that there is a potential risk. What I don't want is for someone operating under a mistaken assumption to assume that because where the building is will be dry with an 8.9 meter flood, without even arguing whether that's appropriate or not, they may be cut off from town. Is that the kind of information that gets shared, especially when it's not Ambulance New Brunswick that you're dealing with? You would warn the developer of a flood risk on the property. What you're saying is there isn't one where they're planning on building. And I'm just a little bit concerned that we had an ambulance depot that was cut off by train traffic. I don't want to have one that's cut off by a flooded road. And so I want this to be in a place, you know, we all have an interest in the ambulance responding quickly. So Is there, okay, in terms of warning them, is that sufficient that we've talked about it publicly here? Or is there a way that we can make sure that Ambulance New Brunswick formally knows that there are some flood implications?
I could certainly reach out and even share with them as well the adopted zoning map, or the adopted flood limit map, which is public, and it is posted on our website, which I believe the town has links to. So certainly I can make contact and share that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Evans. Any other discussion on the motion? Councillor Mitten?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I wanted to speak in favor of the motion, in agreement with what Councillor Evans just said. This is a better location. And my understanding from the report is that the building is not in the flood zone, even though part of the property may be. And my understanding as well from the way emergency measures operations operates is that they try to be aware if there could be the dikes breached, if there could be a flood, and hopefully the ambulances would be moved out of that spot if they wouldn't be safe there and wouldn't be able to respond. So I'm going to speak in favor of the motion and vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, do you have the second?
Thank you, Your Worship. Whereas the council has considered an application from J.N. Lafford Realty to amend bylaw number 244, the Town of Sackville zoning bylaw, to rezone a portion of the property known as PID 00972182 from institutional to mixed use to permit the development of a multi-unit dwelling. Be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Sackville directs that an appropriate bylaw be prepared to amend bylaw number 244, the Town of Sackville zoning bylaw, as it pertains to the above noted property. That the proposed bylaw be referred to the Southeast Planning Review and Adjustment Committee for their views. That the notice of intention requirements of the Community Planning Act be fulfilled with respect to the proposed amendment, and sets the council meeting on Tuesday, May 15th, 2018 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers at the Town Hall, 31 Main Street, 2nd floor, Sackville, New Brunswick, as the date, time, and place for the public hearing and consideration of objections to the proposed bylaw.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Evans. Floor is open for discussion. Councillor Finney.
Your Worship, I'll be voting against this because, as I said, my concerns, even before we go forward to putting it forward to them, Southeast change, whatever they want to change for the zoning bylaw, but I'm concerned about the safety of the entrance and exit there. And so therefore, if I can't stop them from developing, but I'm hoping to be able to reduce the amount that they can develop because of the danger that I consider to be present there at the present time. So.
Thank you, Councillor Finney. So I didn't see who was first. Councillor Mitten?
Thank you. I think it's very reasonable to, at a minimum, proceed to the next step, which would be a public hearing. And this is only before us because the property lines were unclear in 2012 when, and so therefore it wasn't all rezoned as mixed use. Additionally, the proposed use does fit the town's plans for to promote downtown development and have a variety of housing options, especially for seniors. So I will speak in favor of it, of moving to at least the next step and having a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitten. Councillor Evans?
I shouldn't have let Councillor Mitten speak first because that's essentially the point I wanted to raise. The only reason we're actually considering the rezoning now is sort of a fluke what happened before. The whole property would have been rezoned mixed use at the time if the boundaries had been definite, and so this is a simple one to do. But in terms of, we are being asked about rezoning the property. When it comes to developing, if there is a proposal to do something, planning will make sure, staff will make sure that the way the building is built conforms to the bylaws, the rules that we put in place. And so traffic safety is one of the considerations that will have to be considered before any development takes place, parking and all these other things. So I'm confident that we have proper rules in place and staff is capable of making that decision. I'm happy to speak in favor of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Neill?
Thank you, Your Worship. Laurie, is there an entry or an exit off of Main Street as well as the York? Or was it just York Street from that, if this goes forward?
Well, there is the current Main Street entrance or exit, which is like between the former town hall and the newer building, and then the one on York.
I didn't know whether there was one that was down like opposite the Anglican churches or in that area.
No access is down off that part.
I'm in favor of this because I know that it means that there'll be more vehicles, but it's certainly not like everybody's going to be leaving at 7:30 or 8 o'clock to go to work and back in at 5. So anyway, I can't see there being a lot of pressure on the extra traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tower.
Thank you, Your Worship. Lori, the proposed exit from that, where most of the traffic is behind one of the present buildings, or using the traffic pattern that the buildings that exist there now have?
I believe there is some modification to the parking lot, but the primary entrance to the building itself, to the underground parking, would be at the rear of the building that faces York Street. So at the back of the parking lot.
Okay, so it really won't affect any of the present parking spots that are at the other buildings, and it will only, what's that?
I think on the plan, they actually add some, don't they?
Well, the building, or the new building, has the underground parking, so they're not adding any there. But so the traffic from there is just gonna be used the path out of the buildings. And so it won't be going, like saying, well, I need those 3 parking spots moved and eliminated. It's gonna just use this present path.
So part of the development review process will be that they can't take away current parking that they already have. That's the minimum requirements for the particular property for the other buildings that are located on there. And, you know, during that process as well, depending on how their parking gets laid out inside the building, will also dictate the number of parking and possibly the number of units that can go into the building. So for instance, under the current parking regulations, they're required to have 1.25 parking spaces per every unit. So if they were not able to put all of those within the building, they would have to find other spaces on that particular property to show them.
Councillor Black.
Lori, is there any concern with planning or the United Church for, if this zoning happens, rezoning happens, to dig so close to a cemetery? Is there any concern for that?
Well, at present time, the proposed site plan that they're indicating shows approximately 30 feet from the boundary of the cemetery property, which is not necessarily the boundary of any of the good graves on the site. Thank you. So there is quite a significant distance between the proposed building where they would be digging and the property for the cemetery.
Any other question? So, motion is before you. Question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
1 nay from Councillor Finney. Thank you. Motion is carried. We move to item number 8. Which we have a guest to do a poetry reading on this item of Poetry Month. So Shoshana?
Hello, everyone. This is my second time now reading to you in the 3 years that I've lived in Sackville, so Marilyn and I guess, are just going to keep rotating. So April is National Poetry Month, and also Earth Day follows in a few weeks, so I'm hitting both bases tonight. And this poem is called Radio Weather. When there should be snow, There is rain, 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 then ice, then rain. The radio host asks call-in listeners if they think this is a sign of climate change. Old-timers hit speed dial, sidestep the point, eager to talk storms, lives marked by weather. Recall jumping out of windows when the doors were blocked with snow, the hospitals filled up with broken backs. What does it mean? The questions gather. Oh, I have another story, a good one. This storm flooded the town, then froze it in its shell. Each home a snow globe of its own. That one felled trees older than most houses. Rain pummeled us for days until the roads gave way, just buckled. The ground beneath us heaved and upended. Water everywhere, devouring the road as if it were a sandcastle. Took bridges, too. Whole towns unglued, adrift, now islands of their own. Weather serves up memory better than any book. Who likes to think about means and ends, how things change so slowly until they snap? We fear our maps outdated, pencil sketches on onion skin. Our stories, though, tell us who we are. Thank you very much.
Very appropriate for us. I would like to note the proclamation first, if I could. National Poetry Month celebrates poetry writing and the contribution of poets and all writers to the identity and quality of life in our communities. These initiatives also celebrate libraries and the work of municipal leaders to promote literacy, reading, arts, and culture. Whereas poetry reaffirms our common humanity by revealing to us that individuals everywhere share the same questions and feeling, whereas poetry is a mainstay of oral tradition and over the centuries can communicate the innermost values of diverse cultures, whereas thousands of organizations participate through readings, festivals, book displays, workshops, and other events, on behalf of the Town Council and citizens of Sackville, I hereby proclaim April 2018 as National Poetry Month in the town of Sackville. I would like to just recognize, it's appropriate time to recognize somebody in the audience, and that is Ms. Marilyn Lurch, who has dedicated a great deal of her time for us as the Poet Laureate in town and inspired us at many occasions and many places and times and topics. I'll never forget the one about the trees, which was fascinating to me, and although there were many, it's the tree one that stands out to me. I appreciate that. And just want to acknowledge how much effort you put in, because I respect it because I can't rhyme two words at any time, and then you show up event after event and weaving them into a pattern of poetry that reflects our local events and people and resources. And maybe we'll have to get you on to how we value the natural resources, see if you can make a poem out of that. Yeah. So on behalf of the town, I really want to thank you for all of your efforts and your willingness to help grow poetry throughout this region. Thank you very much. Okay, we move to Mayor's report. Oh. A couple of things. This morning on CBC Radio, we did a discussion over flood threats in this area with Mr. Leeske from Mount Allison. I think it was a good discussion as far as I was concerned, and raised some of the topics we heard here tonight about how high the water is going to go, or is it? And the complexity of the response, in particular of, the Globe and Mail article was about the Sackville dikes, but of course we don't own any dikes, we don't operate any dikes, we don't maintain any dikes, but we're threatened by those dikes. So it was important to, I think, to recognize the distinction, and that means somebody else has to act. So we're doing our best to advocate for that action to take place. Was quite some time ago, I did do a Times and Transcript interview on Exit 506 and the concept plan. That was very close, I think, to the last meeting. I also note that we're getting good media reports from UNB's proposal to the NB Power rates about giving us a fair rate for the street lighting, and have not heard anything bad about that presentation so far. So that's be interesting to see what the reply is going to be. I mentioned to some of you that there were a couple of people that have accreditation for mental health services, and they reached out to say they'd like to work in the town, but they were looking for advice on how that could be organized, how it could, where the funds could come from. So I did pull together a couple of organizations that have that same type of interest with some of the people they deal with, and we just held a meeting brief last week, and explored some of those options and assigned some follow-up to see if there is a way that we can bring that forward. Did have a follow-up with United Church, who indicated that they'd be interested if for a one-time potential startup grant if the group wanted to go with them in partnership to the United Church Foundation. So that'll be one of the examples. We seem to get a lot of support, but it's always, where's that money going to come from? I attended, along with many others, Mount Allison session on leadership and volunteerism that focused on age-friendly activities, and it was a very interesting opportunity. The students came asking questions about how do communities build leadership, and how do people take on those roles, and how do they perform them, and mostly from their side of trying to understand how can I help more in communities. So there was probably about 15 people invited, and all had one or two students talking to them individually about how that might happen, what kind of characteristics, what did you do, how did you become more confident in these things, or did you become confident? So it was a very interesting session, and lots of innovative ideas exchanged from both the people they'd invited and from the students, who are also very interested in many of the topics, including the age-friendly report, which we should be getting received because it was being passed around. The final report was passed around that evening. It just came hot off the press, so we will get our formal copy if we haven't got it already. I did meet somebody who was looking for the town to take the next step, saying, okay, looks like you've got something going on at Maloney, looks like you've got something going on at the Burnbury plant, looks like you're dealing with 506, now what? And the question was, where do you go from here? And I think that's a legitimate question about how you market the town for business that we're going to have to turn our heads to. It's frankly where we wanted to be after 2 years, so that's a good thing, and I think that was just a reminder that it never stops. So, did do some welcoming statements in the Visitor's Guide and the summer program, which are now out, I believe. I'm not sure if I spoke about this. It's not in there at the moment, but I did, at the staff's request, call the Environmental Impact Assessment Director about where our assessment process stood. We did get a call back a couple of days later and clarified a few things. And I think we now have some action underway and a bit more of an understanding where the time frame is at. So I think that was useful. Finally, while I was in Vancouver recently, I had the opportunity and met with Mark Jacquard. Some of you may have heard, he writes in the Globe and Mail quite often on energy and greenhouse gases, professor of sustainable energy at Simon Fraser. And we had a very good chat about his group's efforts to create local governance opportunities to do those things, to lower greenhouse gases through the manner in which you make your decisions, and to look at how your planning tools could be used innovatively, and how technology can assist in all of those, and whether you can use technology to assist in meeting those objectives. Excuse me, I knew Mark because we were in grad school together out there. He's done much better than I have. And he has put me in touch with a couple of people. I actually have a call tomorrow with somebody from an energy charging company in Silicon Valley, and we'll follow up on what their views are. They're now selling those across North America. So that's what I have for this time. Are there any questions that you'd like to hear a little more about? Councillor Evans?
First of all, comment, I'm one of, in terms of being responsive to feedback, having the written notes in advance is something that I appreciate, so thank you for that. I got a lot, I'm sure everybody did, but a lot of people have sent us links to the Globe and Mail article. And I like to take any opportunity I can to talk about flooding, and the fact that they're both called flooding doesn't mean that saltwater flooding, overtopping of the dikes, and freshwater flooding, what we've been working at so much lately, are similar, except that they're exacerbated by climate change. They're very different phenomena, and as the mayor alluded, we have an opportunity. We have a fair amount of control over the freshwater flooding aspect, although we have to partner with CN. When it comes to the dikes and saltwater flooding, we are much less directly involved with the solution, but hugely involved with the problem. And the other point was on the UMNB follow-up. It was our motion that UMB accepted, and the new executive director acted on so admirably at the hearing. And I'm really impressed, as someone who has had some reservations about the effectiveness of UMNB. This is a really nice example of the organization working for us, working for all the municipalities. I think virtually every municipality is affected. And I have a hunch, at least from the first indications, that we might actually get some successful resolution to this. So I wanted to call attention to that.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Any other questions for my report? Okay, hearing none, we move to CAO report.
Okay, thank you, Worship. I guess before I'd start, just to comment on the poems, it seemed like such a peaceful moment despite all of the weather events we had. So I might encourage our department heads to take up poetry during severe flooding events and weather events. It seems to create a more peaceful environment than I recall during the recent events that we experienced. So it might be a good suggestion for us. In the report, as we've seen, is a lot of detail on our operations and by each of the managers, which is being presented here this evening. And in addition, obviously you'll notice that we are turning the corner on seasons, and the workload is shifting from more the winter to the summer, and the spring is one of those in-between periods where we're still cleaning up a lot in the winter, and sometimes winter's still continuing somewhat, as we also are preparing for summer. So we hope the sun shines quickly and warms up a bit, and our summer operations will literally heat up as the temperature does. And I guess you've seen a number of resolutions of an operational nature here this evening, and some development motions as well, and also some of community interest. So with that, that's my report, and if there's any questions, be pleased to try and entertain and address them for you.
Any questions from the CAO's report? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to next item, which is Finance and Administration. Part 1, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. I move the council accept the bills and payroll for the month of March 2018 as follows. General Government, $389,364.66. General Capital, $107,244.41. Utility Government, $44,008.86. Utility Capital, $66,704.83. And salaries, $199,361.69.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Tower. Excuse me. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Councillor Tower, is that you?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The information for finance is on pages 34 through 39. The financial statements are included to the end of March 2018, and the only anomaly appears to be in the utility capital with the repairs to the excavator that were unbudgeted. The managers are progressing through their capital projects that were allocated as part of the 2018 budget. Year end is progressing as the auditors have completed most of their work for 2017. Presentation will take place at May 7th special meeting of council with a final approval at the May 14th regular council meeting. We've received word that claim 4 from phase 1 has been approved, and with the check forthcoming to the amount of $1,157,586. Claim 1 of phase 2 was approved with the funds to the amount of $18,869 were received during the month of March. And during March, we received our Canada 150 grant funds in the amount of $150,000. Water bills, billing for the period of January through March 2018 has begun. The water meters were read on April 3rd, with the bills coming out here in the middle of April. We continue to work on the collection of the water sewer shutoff letters that were sent out in September of 2017. At that time, there were 73 accounts that received shutoffs notices for a total value of $69,883.69. As of April 3rd, 2018, we've collected $52,069.03, or a total of 74.5%. We have now disconnected 2 properties services, which were both appear to be vacant, and there are 3 more that are in danger of being shut off if the follow-up for payments is not resolved. The town has received its 2018 property bill with a total assessment of 55 properties. We owe $12,744,000. Yeah, being owed. The assessment, sorry, the assessment of $12,744 and $12,744,400. There, spit it out. Property assessment with the amount of being owed of $272,613. And this compares to our 2017 assessment of $12,769,100 and a drop of 0.2%. The dog tags for 2018 have been available and are still available. The tags were due on March 31st, and that was extended, of course, to April 3rd because of the weekend and the Easter holidays, and are now subject to the $20 late fee. As of April 3rd, we have sold 287 tags. In 2017, there were 369 tags sold. And of course, the bylaw and bylaws enforcement and animal control statistics are on page 40 and 41. If there are any questions, fire away, please.
Councillor Black?
Thanks. Just one, the Canada 150 funds in the amount of $150,000 said advised payment was forthcoming on March 28th, so have we seen those funds?
Yeah, the funds were actually deposited on March 28th. We had submitted our claim, I think, no more than a week to 10 days before that, and it's the fastest I've ever seen the province process a claim for reimbursement and have the funds deposited ever, so.
Any other questions on finance and admin? Councillor Fenney.
I was just going to say, Michael, can you tell us why it's taken so long to settle that sign crashing into the sign? Our money from the insurance company?
Yeah, as you know, the sign on Walker Road has not been put back in place. So we had purchased the post and the signboard. The signboard is awaiting the new sign, but the part that's holding us up is the electrical.
We previously had battery power up there, and we're in the process of switching that to electrical with all the issues that we had up there. So it will be electrical, but until that electrical has been installed by NB Power, we don't have an exact cost on that. So we can't finalize the claim for that. We have 2 years to finalize claims when insurance issues happen. Or at least file a notice, and if they disagree with it, then it could take longer than 2 years if it were to go through court. But we have 2 years to file the official amount of the claim, which would be January of 2019. So we are, once the power is installed, we will then file all our financial figures and look to have that settled up.
So could we say that insurance companies work as fast as government does?
Councillor Evans?
I'd just like to call attention to something which I had complained about earlier, and that's that our own property tax bill actually went down. So what the provincial government had told us is being borne out by some examples. Now, it went down 0.2%. I was terrified when Councillor Tower said we had a $12 million tax bill. I'm glad he corrected it. But our tax assessed value did go down, which is consistent with the problem that the province created for us in terms of our collecting taxes. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Mr. Beal, you want to comment on that then?
Yeah, there are, I guess, some words of caution in that one, in that we had appealed 6 properties last year as well. I believe 3 of them were maintained, and 3 of them were reduced. One substantially, I believe, close to 80 to 100,000. Without those appeals, then quite possibly ours would not have gone down. So.
Good, thanks for flagging and doing that. Any other questions? No? Hearing none, we move on to tourism and business development. Deputy Mayor Aiken.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report for tourism business development appears on page 42 of the package. And I'll just highlight a couple of points in it. Preparation for the Border Town Festival, which this year runs May 2 to May 6, is continued with many theater, fine arts, and music events planned. As you may have heard, David Miles has been confirmed as our headline act, and the full list of events is at sackville.com/bordertown. The manager attended the Mount Allison Open House on March 2nd, and apparently a good event with lots of interactions with potential students and their parents. And as we mentioned earlier, Mr. Kelly Spurls attended the first meeting of the Interim Regional Tourism Development Steering Committee on April 3rd, and he's already spoken about what transpired at that meeting. The department is pleased with the recent business development ads that were placed in spring editions of Business Expansion Journal and the Atlantic Business Magazine. And at our liaison meeting last month, we saw these ads, and they actually do look very good. And finally, staff continue to finalize the 2018 Town of Sackville Visitor Guide. Will be distributed starting at Saltscapes on April 20th to 22nd in Halifax. And that's the report, Your Worship. I have no motions.
Any questions? No? And you say no motions? Okay. Any questions on tourism? No? Okay, we'll move on to public property and facilities. Councillor Tower.
Thank you, Your Worship. The information's on pages 46 and 47. The engineering department continued to work with Crandall Engineering Limited on the EIA process of Phase 2 of the Lawrence Street Reconstruction Stormwater Mitigation Project. We have been consulting with the Department of Environment and Local Government regarding the EIA, and we have received draft determination for review and comments, working closely with the department and to address all the EIA concerns. And Dwayne, the possible date for acknowledgement will be when?
just got an email late Friday, and they had indicated that on or before April the 17th, we would have our copy of the draft conditions that we would have to meet, and all the terms and conditions that we have to follow for Phase 2.
The Engineering and Public Works Department continue to work with Meritech Construction Limited and Sackville Plumbing and Heating to prepare the installation of the in-floor heating and the concrete slab for the new storage building, and we expect all this work to be completed by the end of May. Engineering Department issued a tender number 2018-05 for asphalt resurfacing of various streets during the month of March. During the tender opening on March 28th, we received 4 tender bids. And the motion, of course, is coming up after this. And I'm trying to find that information on the lowest bids and all the bids, which I think is on page 48. Otherwise, the Engineering Department is issued an invite, or RFP, from GNSS GPS equipment to be able to provide the necessary pickup of all municipal utility systems and utilize the town construction projects for the future. There are 4 companies invited to submit, and each company was evaluated on various criteria and required demo on the quoted equipment. A motion will be coming forward, and can you give a basic idea, Dwayne, of some of the criteria used to determine it?
Thank you, Councillor Tower. We used, as far as the evaluation goes, we used the ease of operation, learning curve of the equipment and the software. Price and annual fees was another criteria. The durability of the equipment. Download and transfer of data and the ease of that was another criteria. Technical and service support and references. Those are all the criteria that we evaluated all of them on. As well, we did a live demo of each equipment was demoed by the companies, and we had the opportunity to utilize the equipment and become familiar with each piece of equipment being quoted.
The Tantramar Veteran Memorial Civic Center, congratulations to the Titan boys on their AA Provincial Championship. Congratulations to AIL Rangers for their win at the Days of Champions. Congratulations to the Pee Wee Max for their 2nd place finish in the provincials. Also a big thank you to all the volunteers for the many hours to make all these programs work well. The staff has started building maintenance at the Civic Center to prepare for the Minor Lacrosse, which starts on April 10th. The ice plant was shut down on March 26th for the season. The overhaul of the compressor number 1 will take place in late August or early September before the plant is to start up for the next ice season. Municipal parks will be starting to do some of their spring cleanup in the parks, as this weather is now slowly getting much better. Staff have attended a workshop in Fredericton for natural playground designs and are looking forward to starting this project. The design and search of the funding partners will be finalized in early summer. The playground installation work in Lilas Fawcett Park is planned for September. Staff recently met with Kelly Nicole Crocher, a watershed coordinator with EOS Eco Energy, to discuss a variety of water quality topics for the community, as well as potential for the establishment of the Silver Lake Watershed Association. The subcommittee of the Waterfowl Advisory Committee has met to discuss potential plans for the Lund property in conjunction with the 30th anniversary of the Waterfowl Park celebrations. And the work in the planning stages at this point in the town is waiting for the final steps in the land transfer so they can move forward. And that is a report. I have some motions, but if there's questions.
Question from Councillor Black.
Thank you. Dwayne, in the report it said that you have received a draft determination for the EIA, or that's coming? I'm sorry, I just wanted clarification.
Well, we had received, I guess, a portion of the draft conditions, but we finally got word on Friday that the final draft conditions will be drafted and sent to us for our review, and we're hoping to have that by on or before April the 17th. But we've been in discussions with them back and forth, and they've given us a list of few of the draft conditions. They were waiting for comments from the federal government, and have got tired of waiting for those responses, so they're proceeding ahead with those conditions, and we should receive them soon.
Councillor Black again?
I just wanted to say a little bit more about the Titan Boys Hockey Championship. I had messaged sports writer Jeff Tower, who may or may not be the successor to Wally Sears eventually. It's been 21 years since the last championship team for boys high school hockey. And to his knowledge, they've never won a hockey and football title in the same year. So the Titans won both of those provincial titles in the same year. Not only that, but most of the boys who played on the hockey team also played on the football team, which also has only happened a few times in the province as a whole. They won both in '87. But it was hockey in the spring and football in the fall, so it wasn't in the same year. So this is quite an achievement for our local sports team. So I just wanted to say congratulations again.
Well done. Thanks for checking that with Jeff. Councillor Evans?
Yeah, this seems like a come down after that. I mean, that's pretty impressive stuff. I echo your vicarious pride. Just want to follow up on the environmental impact assessment. We knew, or staff knew, we would have to do this going in, and we're prepared for this. The consultants knew about this, but it seems to me that the delays we're the victims of it. We didn't cause them. And there was, what I want you to do is comment on the fact that part of the original plan is that some of the work would be done in the wintertime. And obviously, in spite of the weather outside, that's not going to happen. And I just want to know if you can tell us the impact of the delays that the federal government have cost us. Is it going to, I mean, we had a big project completed on time and on budget, and I'm nervous. So can you assuage those concerns?
Thank you, Councillor Irvin. I'd be happy to do that. Yes, the original plan was we were going to do winter construction. The EIA hit. There was a big process in the EIA, which I think Council was involved in, public presentations. There was comments from the federal government, which still waiting for, provincial governments, the environment. It was a long, drawn-out process. In the midst of all that, we had a representative, EIA representative, Christy Ward, who had, in the interim, has taken a different job. So they've now switched guards, and that was another delay. On top of all this, they've now switched to a Susan Dean, who's our new representative, the EIA representative. So there was obviously some delays in that as well. But what does that mean for the project? Yes, it's delayed us, 3-4 months for sure. However, they have indicated in the discussions that we had, there is some work that could be done outside of what I'll call wetlands, such as crossways at Crescent and Abydos and that sort of thing that could be done, let's say, after the tender is closed, between then and the fall. Outside of what we call the nesting season. That's a bit of an issue with the Department of Environment to go in and do disruption on wetlands during the nesting period. So it's more than likely, once we get the conditions, we will not be able to do work in wetlands. We'll have to wait till after the nesting season, which is around the September timeframe. And that will take us into the fall and winter construction for that work, which is kind of what we had anticipated. We're a year later. And having said all that, I think Council was well aware that we did and have received an extension. Everyone has received an extension on the program until I believe it's 2020. So we're delayed. I think there's at least it appears that there's a plan moving forward. Disappointing delays for sure. but I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and we'll put the game plan together as soon as we get the determination and know what we can and can't do. Thank you. I think you're welcome.
CAO, please.
If I could just add to that too, if you recall when we first submitted our applications for the infrastructure projects, the first was Phase 1 of Lawrence Street, and only because we got indication from the province and the feds of there are still dollars there, we went after Phase 2. So we were fortunate to get extra funding for both Phase 1 and Phase 2 in that area. Rather aggressive. And as much as it didn't hit our time frame, and the time frame was quite compressed because we were to be all done by March 31st of 2018, which the feds had originally set that time frame. It was only shortly after getting into it that they, I think they heard from across the country that, a lot of communities had ambitious plans, projects, et cetera, and that time frame was difficult. So I think that contributed to getting the extension. I think it made it a little more reasonable for municipalities and communities to follow up. And I expect those that are working on the infrastructure projects, both at the provincial and federal level, are kind of being challenged as well, trying to meet things. So unfortunately, we didn't get out of the gate when we had wanted to. I think the project will probably be enhanced and improved from the EIA study that we've done, and I think, as Dwayne has indicated, we've received some positive feedback from the province in the last few weeks, which enable us to get some of the work done this summer and tackle the majority of it probably next fall and winter. So,
Great, thank you for that. Any other questions? Just Deputy Mayor is going to recuse himself. Let the record show. Councillor Tower.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council award tender number 2018-05, asphalt resurfacing of various streets to the lowest bidder, Costin Paving and Contracting in Amherst, Nova Scotia, based on the unit price included in the tender in the amount not to exceed $457,000, HST included.
Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Councillor Finney.
And
There's an amount on the report, but then this one I believe is different. It was 574, or is this not the same thing? Nope, the revised one.
Looking at the council report, I see what you're saying. We'll ask Mr. Acton to speak to that as well.
Oh, I see. Yeah, well, there's a reason for that, which is why I was gonna. There's a reason for that, and I was gonna have Dwayne update us why that difference, because of what we budgeted and what came through. So go ahead, please, Dwayne.
Under the question? Thank you, Councillor Tower. Yes, Councillor O'Neill, there is a difference, and obviously the difference is that our budget that was budgeted for this year's gas tax or paving of various streets was the $457,000. Tenders came in over budget. In fact, pricing was on base and seal asphalt was about between 30 and 39% increase from last year's pricing. So considerably higher than last year and therefore is over budget. So that is why the motion is in the reduced amount. Now it is our intention, we have a list of streets which I sent council for your information. It is our intent to try to at least get paving on all those streets. May not be as much as we anticipated. May have to cut back slightly on a few, but it'll be picked up in the following year, and it's been a phased approach all along and will continue to be a phased approach, but unfortunately pricing came in considerably higher and our budget is the 457.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Thank you.
Question?
We had a second, okay. Any other question? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Now we can get our counselor back. Our deputy mayor, pardon me, that's right. Yeah, email with that. Maybe didn't want you to know, because you're thinking green, and that's not green.
Okay, Councillor Tower, you have another motion?
I do, your worship. I move that council approve the purchase of the TopCon GNSS system from Brandt Positioning Technology Division of Fredericton, New Brunswick, in the amount of $21,043.85, HST included.
Moved by Councillor Tower, seconded by Councillor Finney. We did
Dwayne,
hear-
would you?
Yeah, we did hear a little bit.
Yeah.
Could you mind speaking about the evaluation?
Sure. As I indicated a little bit ago, we evaluated, or we invited 4 companies to bid on the GNSS equipment. This equipment is going to be utilized for enhancing our asset management and our utility mapping system. So we'll be utilizing students and staff over the next many years to pick up all of our utilities out in the field, such as manholes, curb stops, valves, hydrants, catch basins, manholes, and bringing that information back and improving our accuracy and building our ArcGIS system, which maps all of our utility systems and is also a part of our asset management, which we're getting just started with as well. So that's what this equipment will be used for as well. For construction projects, doing both layout and pickup. So if we're doing a new project, in the past, we've had to hire survey companies to do pickup for us. So we have the technology with this equipment to go out and do that ourselves, to be able to do our construction project both on the front end and of course on the back end for the layout. And so we evaluated all these. We had 3 different evaluators, myself, our engineering technologist, and our superintendent of public works. And after the evaluations, we came back together and determined the equipment that we felt best suited the town of Sackville. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Yes, not only is this asset management best practice, it's actually a requirement of the gas tax funding. And I believe that when we had an offer from the Regional Service Commission a few months ago, but whether or not we wanted to buy into acquiring this software, the ArcGIS software, so that we could start doing it, and our response was, no thank you, we've already started it. So I'm delighted that we're proceeding with this. This is what we should be doing, and the fact that we're doing it now is something I heartily support.
Okay, Councillor Edwards, any other question? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Councillor Tower?
Thank you. Dwayne, is there a chance we could have that posted on our website? The information of the streets? Okay. Okay, thank you.
It just struck me when the deputy mayor was out of the hall for a second that I should have deferred to him while I was away, and I would just ask if you would like to make any comments about the Mountie Day where you were at, and or the powwow, which I believe you also attended at Mount Allison. Could you just?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I represented the town at, first of all, the Mount Allison powwow, which I have to confess I went to with some trepidation, not knowing what it was, but it was an utterly fascinating event. Quite colorful, quite energetic, very interesting, and I would encourage everyone to go next year, because apparently they're going to do this every year. And I simply welcomed everybody on behalf of the town. And on Mountie Day, we had a small ceremony down underneath the awning here, in which we, first of all, acknowledged the contributions of Robert Campbell and Christopher Dunn to the town. And I would congratulate whoever came up with the idea and staff of planting in commemoration of their efforts, we planted tulips because Crystal Verdun is Dutch, and Scotch heather on our flower bed where the statue of George Stanley's going, and I know both of them were quite touched by this gesture. And then we simply acknowledge the accomplishments of the Mount Allison student athletes, and I guess most prominently featured was the women's basketball team, who was in the finals of the national championships. And then everyone adjourned upstairs for cake and treats.
Thank you. Sorry to miss that earlier. I appreciate that. So we move on to recreation programs and events. Councillor Butcher.
Thank you. The report can be found on page 49, 50, and 51. Our liaison group met on March 27th. Some of the highlights of our meeting. April is Poetry Month, as you already heard, and the department has been working with local poets to develop a schedule of events, including poetry in the schools, public readings, and our poetry writing contest. And all the month's events can be found at sackville.com and in the Tribune, and also on posters throughout the town. Once again, I would just like to extend a huge thank you to our Poet Laureate, Marilyn Lurch, and our local writer, Shoshana Wingate, who both volunteer many hours during Poetry Month, and they have been cornerstones in making the month a success. So thank you again. Daytime pickleball is continuing as regular programming, but is taking a break during the Mount Allison exams. There will be 3 scheduled evening drop-in sessions at Marshview Middle School on Wednesday, April 18th, the 25th, and May 2nd from 6:30 until 8:30. The Learn to Run program starts tomorrow night, and registration has been strong. Operation Halo, that's hiking adventures for ladies only, will be held at Beach Hill Park on the afternoon of April 29th, and ladies may register at sackville.com, and space is limited. There will be an introduction to Maps and Compass held on April 21st at Beach Hill Park. This is an adult-only program, and pre-registration is required at sackville.com. After a hugely popular Learn to Play Pokemon workshop earlier this winter, plans are underway to offer a second session. And our Operation Beautification will be held on Thursday, May 10th. Clear and blue bags will be available at Town Hall lobby from 10:30 in the morning until 6 o'clock. And we encourage local organizations and businesses and individuals to take some time out of their day to help clean up our town. And the business or organization that fills the most bags of garbage will be featured in the Tribune Post. A full complement of summer staff has been hired, including 1 program coordinator, 4 lifeguards, and 4 programmers. And our 3rd annual volunteer recognition night will be held in late June, and nomination forms are now available at sackville.com. Our Sackville Triathlon will be held on August 25th, and I have a motion coming up about the road closure needed for that. The first meeting of our Recreation Master Planning Committee took place on March 6th, and an online survey has been released for Mount A students, and a town resident survey will be released soon, and we will be moving forward with a public consultation process in the coming months. And that is my report.
Any questions on the report? You have a motion?
I do. I move that council authorize the closure of Main Street from Donald Harper Road to Station Road, as well as Church Street from McPhee Lane to Main Street on Saturday, August 25th, 2018, from 8:30 a.m. to 12 noon in order to facilitate the Sackville Swim Club Triathlon.
Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Councillor Mitten. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, Councillor Butcher. Move on to public safety. Who's starting? Councillor O'Neill?
Thank you, Your Worship. The Sackville Fire and Rescue responded to 13 calls for service in the month of March, which included 4 motor vehicle collisions, 4 commercial fire alarms, 1 flue fire, 1 smell of gas in a residence, 1 smoke in a residence, 1 garage fire, one report of bright flashes within the industrial park. However, calls for service to date in 2018 are down 17 calls compared to last year at the same time. Training took place in the month, which consisted of doing station and equipment checks, as well as orientation and pump training on the new pumper tanker truck. Their new 2,500-gallon pumper tanker truck arrived in town on Sunday, March the 25th, and saw a number of their members participate in the day-long orientation and training on the new valuable piece of fire suppression equipment. Over the next month, the members will train extensively on this new piece of equipment to ensure all are aware of all of its capabilities before going into active duty on April the 30th. And I'll just stop there in that report and say thank you to the chief for giving me a good look at the new truck. It's an awesome piece of equipment, one that I'm sure that everybody in the town will feel so proud every time they see it, and it's certainly going to be a big help to the department and when it's required, and for quite a surrounding area as well, not just within the town, but it's an awesome piece. Mark your calendars. Pancake and maple syrup breakfast is scheduled for Saturday, April the 14th from 7 to 11. And he also reminds us that their 13th annual truck draw tickets are out and around in the businesses, members and so on. And once again, there's a reminder that rubbish fires are strictly prohibited within the town limits. And if you want to have a fire outside, you have to have a wood-burning appliance, which is manufactured non-combustible enclosed container designed to hold a small fire. And wood-burning appliance should not be larger than 1 meter in any direction, and it may include a chimney. And again, he reminds us to be prepared for at least 72 hours in the event of an emergency. And that's the report. If there's any questions, I'd ask you to pass them to the chief. Thank you.
Councillor Evans?
If I was a mature adult, I would ask you about the pumper or something, or the tanker, but I have to know what happened in Area 51. Is it aliens? What were the bright flashes in the industrial park?
So we received a report for bright flashes within the industrial park. The area was searched with negative results, so undetermined what actually it was. But unfortunately, a 911 caller did see bright flashes within the industrial park, and we responded accordingly, again, with negative results.
So that's an unidentified flashing object, so you saw a UFO.
Councillor Tower?
Thank you, Worship. Just a comment here that the breakfast being this Saturday, which can be fantastic, of course, but also that those two over there have tickets if anyone wants to flog them tonight and pick them up before they leave. So, yes, that's all.
Okay, we'll move to the police report section of the, Councillor Black?
Thank you. The police report can be found on pages 53, 54, and 55. Call volume in March was slightly lower than last year. Overall, calls for service in the community have gone up since last year. Over the last year, April, July, and September were noticeably higher in call volumes. Reported property crimes in the town has been consistent the last few months, but March saw a spike. 24 tickets were written in the town. Some of these were due to selective traffic enforcement, looking for things such as distracted driving and speeding. There were several foot patrols, which are a proactive way for the RCMP to increase visibility and deter late-night liquor-related activities. And there were also 8 school visits, which excludes the CPO visits for the month. An update on the human resources side. After several months of vacancies in both municipal and provincial positions, Sackville is now down to 1 vacancy. This would be the provincial corporal position, which is currently in a promotional process. A municipal constable is in the process of being transferred, but pending the sale of a home, there aren't any plans to replace her. For the CPO report, which is on page 54 and 55, aside from his 2 active adult files and 5 active youth files, he continues to go to the 3 schools in the area and Mount Allison regularly for school visits. Within the community, he continues to work with MAD Canada, and I think every month I mention this, that they're still looking for Sackville volunteers. So if there's anybody out there who's interested in this organization, please get in contact with JF. And he's also currently working on a project with Crossroads for Women. Sackville Commons invited him to participate, to apply for a grant through the RCMP that will allow to train people how to deal with clients that have recently been victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. And that's the end of my report.
Any questions on the police portion of the report? No? Okay, no motions. So we move to item H, policy bylaw. Councillor Black.
Thank you again. The Policy and Bylaw Liaison Group met on March 21st and continued to look over a number of sections of bylaw number 231, the street traffic bylaw, and reviewed some recommendations and suggestions submitted by staff. As mentioned in last month's report, the group has been reviewing bylaw number 231, street traffic bylaw, in its entirety and are near completion. Staff will be making all of the recommended changes and bringing back to the liaison group to review the full bylaw with the changes made during next month's meeting before presenting the recommended revisions to council for consideration. And that's the report.
Thank you. Any questions? Policy bylaw? No? Councillor O'Neill?
Worship. Council liaison met on April the 5th. As of the last pay period in February, there were 38 permanent employees and 3 temporary ones, which included crossing guards and recreation. 2 outstanding grievances relating to staffing have been referred to arbitration. Robert Breen has been confirmed as the arbitrator, and the hearing date is expected to occur in mid-June. Department heads are in the midst of reviewing and interviewing summer employment applications, many being confirmed in the near future. Orientation sessions are planned to be held for summer and fall staff later this month. And that's the end of the report.
Excuse me, thank you. Any questions on personnel? Hearing none, we'll move to item J, corporate affairs. Councillor Butcher?
Thank you. The report can be found on page 58 and 59. We met on March 23rd, and there's quite an extensive report here, so I'm just going to highlight some. As you heard, the final plan of our Exit 506 land use and functional planning study that was prepared by Acoustics Planning Design was provided to council at the April 3rd special council meeting. And the plan provides a comprehensive background review. It includes data collection, outlines the consultation process used, provides a thorough analysis and recommended improvements to the Exit 506 area. It is a significant report and highlights a range of improvements from everything from bike lanes and urban design standards and curbs and perhaps anchor in the area, new Coville Park. The infrastructure upgrades identified in the plan are intended to improve the area as well as enhance the functionality and aesthetics of the Exit 506 area for increased public use. It needs to be recognized that both public and private sector investment will be required in the future to realize the objectives outlined in the plan. And for anyone who is interested in looking at it, the final plan is now posted on the website. So pending the endorsement of the plan's vision by council, which will be happening, coming forward at a motion tonight, then staff will look at a variety of implementation mechanisms to ensure the plan materializes, including future operations and capital budget processes, as well as working with the Southeast Regional Service Commission on municipal planning and zoning bylaw amendments. The staff was pleased to present at the 2018 annual conference in New Brunswick, Climate Change Adaptation Collaborative Ready for Action, Adapting to a Changing Climate in March. It was in the 14th in the Miramichi, and the staff presented on the town's stormwater management plans for Lawrence Street. As noted at the March meeting, staff have been working with students who are enrolled in a geography and environment class instructed by Dr. Kristen Lowett at Mount A, and 2 students provided assistance with civic engagement to help us see and understand what other municipalities are doing to get people interested in municipal government. The students conducted a variety of research, both locally and more regionally, and we look forward to receiving their final report at the end of the semester. As you heard, our 150 grant has now been completed. All of the work is done. We've received the money, and a celebration of the overall project is being planned for around Canada Day, so stay tuned for that. As part of our strategic plan reporting process, staff released a new annual residence survey during the week of March 19th. And the survey will obtain feedback on our various service delivery areas. The survey is featured on our website, and it's been distributed via our social media channels, the newspaper, and that's been in an effort to reach residents of all ages. The survey results will be assembled into a report card type infographic once the results are all accumulated. And the survey is still opened until April 13th. And the Community Partnerships Working Group is scheduled for April 4th, and the group will be joined by the Manager of Student Conduct at Dalhousie University, who will be discussing some of the community outreach and collaboration taking place in downtown Halifax. And that's the report.
Thank you. Any questions on corporate strategic affairs? No, we have a motion or two.
We have 2. I move that on behalf of the Town of Sackville and Sackville Town Council, the mayor sign the Southeast New Brunswick Regional Food Pledge.
Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Councillor Mitten. Question? Oh, sorry.
I'd like to speak in favor of this motion. I think this is a good opportunity for the town of Sackville to show leadership in relation to food security, health, the local economy, education, by signing on to the pledge, as it reflects our values and aligns with many of the actions that the town is already taking. It also provides a chance to look at our policies and practices through a food lens and see where we can do even better to serve our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
I move that council endorse the Exit 506 land use and functional planning study prepared by Acoustics Planning and Design dated March 2018 and have staff proceed with an implementation strategy.
Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken. Comments, questions? Councillor Evans.
Yeah. I really like the idea of planning before action. There was a question raised earlier, similar to the one I raised when we first heard about it, when we first heard about the zoning request. I like the idea of planning first. I was really glad to also get answers to questions about if there was going to be development, how would we do it, things like traffic, roads, and infrastructure. I was also really glad to get input from members of the public. We got some really good ideas about parks and trails. So I certainly support accepting the study so that the consultant can get paid and consider the job fulfilled. But I'm not prepared to commit to supporting all the recommendations that are in the report. I want to make that clear that this is I call it sort of a lovely idea, but there are a number of parts to the vision which are out of our control, private development, for example, or subject to financial and other constraints that we just may not be able to deliver on. And there are a few things in it which I don't agree with. So obviously I would not support those. So I'm prepared to accept it, provided we make that clear. And I think that was the consensus at our discussion meeting. I am a little bit concerned, and I know this sounds like a broken record, the lack of attention to flood risk in the report. I mean, it was mentioned, I think 3 times, but I think, and I wrote some thoughts down here this afternoon, that flooding risks have dominated our agenda and our budget. These are our biggest projects recently. Yet I'm still of the belief that many of our citizens don't appreciate the reality and implications of this flood risk. We have made real progress in addressing this challenge and mitigating the risks and consequences. However, this has only been the beginning. I think we need to keep this on the front burner. We need to continue efforts to raise awareness of this reality, continue to discuss and consider next steps regarding land use in floodplains. For example, we could consider adopting a 10-meter flood map. We could consider more restrictive regulations about development in the floodplain, and we could also consider how to deal with individuals negatively impacted by owning property in the floodplain. I don't have all the answers, but I know that the best time to consider these issues is before the next flood. We need to make sure that everything we do is consistent with a recognition of the risks and attempts to mitigate future damage. If we stick our heads in the sand on this issue, we risk getting wet. Thank you.
Councillor Finney, you were saying?
I was just going to say, I usually don't agree with Councillor Evans on very many things, but this one I do. As a matter of fact, finally, we're starting to see eye to eye. So thank you very much, Councillor Evans.
Councillor Mitten.
Thank you. I'm going to echo some of the things Councillor Evans said. I support the overall vision of a welcoming exit or entrance 506 to the town, which encourages walking, riding your bike, walking your dog. It has green spaces being preserved as parks. And if development were to occur, it would encourage a certain welcoming and walkable feeling and encourage people to stop and visit again. There are some specific suggestions and amendments that I may not support if and when they come before council. There are also concerns being raised, as Councillor Evans raised, about the impact of flooding on this area. It is a reality that Sackville faces, the potential of saltwater flooding if the dikes are breached. I don't think that means we can't develop anything in this area, especially because some of it would not be underwater in a flood. And the good thing about some of the things proposed, such as the Colville Park, the dog park, these, the potential for flooding doesn't pose as big a risk to outdoor spaces. There is a bigger conversation we need to have in our community about the long-term issue of saltwater flooding. And we do need to keep this risk in mind as we move forward. However, ultimately, I like this plan, and it contains a lot of good ideas and valuable information, and many of these ideas came from our community who participated in the public consultations, and I really appreciate that. So I will be voting in favor of this motion.
Thank you. Any other? Question? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you. Yes. Okay, so that is it for corporate services, correct? Okay, so we move to new business. There was no new business added, so that is not an item. And we go to question period press.
Going back to the EIA, I guess based on your initial discussions with the Department of the Environment, do you foresee any challenges or issues that well, perhaps maybe weren't expected that in the initial plans for the project? Any challenges or issues that may come up?
Well, we haven't seen those terms yet, so
Yeah.
I'll defer to
No, I'm wondering
Mr. Acton.
with Mr. Acton in his initial discussions over the initial draft discussions that he was talking about.
Thank you, Katie. In our discussions, and again, we have not seen all the details of the determination, but all indications is that there's nothing out of the norm there for us that I guess we would be alarmed about. You know, the nesting season was something that was discussed through the process and was part of the process, so that's understood. And yes, it's delayed us, but again, we feel we'll have a plan in place to be able to deal with that. So other than that, there was no major things that we're aware of at this point in time.
Regarding the annual resident survey that was mentioned, I'm just wondering about, so far, the response rate since you opened that up to the public.
Mr. Burke, please.
Thanks, Katie. As of today, we hit the 100th submission. So we hope we'll continue to increase those numbers up until the end of the week.
Thank you.
I'm wondering about that sign at Walker Road, if it will it take 2 years to install that, or until you get the insurance company settlement?
I'll start. No, the insurance settlement has nothing to do with the actual signage installation. So the insurance settlement is strictly a financial thing. Council had previously approved last fall to purchase the post and the sign that's required to install it. So I can pass it on to Jamie or Dwayne to probably Jamie to discuss where we're at with the actual sign installation. The power being an alternate issue as well, in order to have it properly lighted during the evenings and overnight. So.
Thanks, Bruce. I guess right now, as Michael said, we're waiting for to work out the power hookup with MB Power. We do have roadway systems retained to complete the sign structure itself. And we're just getting a few revised quotes on the actual printing of the signs for the image which we released last month. So certainly we're hoping to have it up for this tourism season. We'll be looking to do that early in spring here within the next month or two.
Thank you. I'm wondering something for clarification here about the parking at the Laffords property. I think Ms. Bickford said that they have minimum parking there now, and that therefore they can't take away from the parking they have there when they're constructing the new building and the underground parking there. Am I right about that?
That's certainly what I heard. There's minimum parking for the existing 2 buildings.
Yes.
Okay, perhaps I didn't clarify well enough. What I said, or what I meant to say, if it didn't come across clearly, is that there are minimum parking requirements under the zoning bylaw. And as per that, any new development, that we would look at the parking as combined with all of the units that are on it and all of the development. So they have to meet the minimum requirements of the bylaw. Whether presently there exceeds, they definitely would have their minimum, because it's part of the requirement of the development permit of the other ones, that they either met or exceeded at the time of those approvals. So to say specifically if they had any extra overflow, I'm not sure as of now, because we only make sure that the minimum amount that's required under the bylaws is there.
Okay. Does that help?
Thank you. And my last question also has to do with the Lafford development, the proposed rezoning. I'm wondering if council or any committee of council has had any meetings with the Laffords on this proposal for rezoning.
No?
I have met with them. Talk about the project, yes.
Yeah, but not as a council.
But not as a council, no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Questions from the audience?
I had a question for Lori also. I think Bruce asked you, but you didn't answer. If the rezoning isn't going through, how many units would be in the other building? If he doesn't get the rezoning and he wants to have 36 units, how much smaller would the other building be?
There's too many variables to say a size, because there's multiple regulations that have to be met, so.
Well, for the public meeting, it would be nice if we would have more detailed drawings showing exactly, if it isn't put through the rezoning, what exactly what it would look like either way. And also, I find the drawings should be a little clearer for the public meeting, because if I understood you correctly, the underground parking would be behind the Swan Pond, will have view of it, the cars going in and out of the underground parking. So it would be nice for the public hearing, like the drawings that I've seen are really unclear where the Swan Pond is and how close it's going to be to the street. It doesn't even show the other buildings on the property. So I'm just requesting that there be more detailed drawings for the public meeting, and also what it's going to be like if it doesn't go through. Is that possible?
Unfortunately, that component isn't possible. We only request that an individual submit a proposal that they want. So
Yeah.
that would be how I would suggest that they proceed with a rezoning request. We would never ask an individual to submit 4 different proposals, and council can't be in a position where they have 4 proposals on the table.
No, we
and
just
have to
need to
pick.
see if it doesn't go through, what he will build. But we do know he has property that doesn't need to be rezoned, so we know how would he position his building, and how big would it be?
But all we would know is there are potential other options out there for him. How they would take form that would be for something for him to view at the time that if this request was denied.
Well, I don't really understand what we're going to learn at that meeting then. What?
The proposal is that he has a proposal for a particular building, and in order to do that, we'd need a rezoning. If we don't rezone it, he goes back to the drawing board.
But we don't know what he's going to build.
That's right.
If
That's
it's
right.
not rezoned. So
That's correct.
that would help people decide if they think it's a good idea or not. If they knew it was going to be the same amount of units, but positioned differently, like, how are we going to know what the difference would be?
Well, the problem we're in is that we can't ask him to submit a second proposal, but because this is in a public forum, the question's really been laid out, and it would be up to him to respond when he wants to come to the public meeting to say, this is my alternative that I would look at. We couldn't ask him to do that, but I would suggest that maybe what we're saying here tonight, you may be able to influence the proponent to bring that, so.
Well, I just think the drawings, if the drawings were more detailed and they showed actually where the Swan Pond is and where the parking is going to, like how it's angled towards the Swan Pond, I think it would help people understand more what the building would look like, rather than what we have here. Anyway, that's my comment.
I can just add, as you've seen from the public presentation that was done tonight for a public hearing, when we move to a public hearing stage,
Yeah.
it does become more detailed.
Oh,
And there
good.
are more images that are shown.
Okay.
At this stage, it's just preliminary, so we only put minimal in to show.
Okay, and the other thing is, I just want to know why it always says that will be accessed primarily. Why does it always say primarily from York Street? Is there a possibility there's going to be another way to get in, to access? Why does it always say primarily? Why doesn't it just say it will be accessed from York Street?
You also have the Main Street entrance where the
But
old
are
town
people
hall
going
is.
to go in there then, or
People are
going-
allowed to enter that parking lot for whatever.
Councillor
So
Stone?
will that be used
Councillors,
more
that
often?
You should be going through the chair, right, not responding to individual requests. Second, Erna, you didn't introduce yourself, just for the record. Can you just say your name?
Oh, okay, Erna Ricciuto.
Thanks. Okay, and your question there about access was?
Well, the last thing I wanted to say, because I don't want to hold you up, but it's in here that it says access primarily from York Street. So I was just, people might think that it's just York Street, but there is the other entrance that I
Right,
guess Mike
yeah.
was talking about. So I think that should be brought to people's attention too for the public meeting.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Wendy Alder again. Mayor and Councillor, I have three just quick questions. One of the items in the budget we talked about, and I've been working with Jamie on, was the highway signage and changing the green signs. I'm just wondering if there's an update on that. It's April now, so.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. We did receive an update from DTI last Thursday. So they've now submitted a full proposal, which we just received, obviously, so that's under review. And they've given us a hard number on installation. So we'll be reviewing that over the next week or two, and then determine whether or not we need to approach council for further discussion, or whether or not it's an operational matter that we can simply proceed on.
Awesome, okay. Second question, again, just a quick one. The residents of Balter Place have an agreement, I believe, with the town that the gate at the end of Balter will only be open during the farm day or whatever, the Doncaster Farm Day, but it's been open since, well, I went for a walk yesterday, it was open, it may have got locked today, but it's been open since at least the Titans provincials were here.
Mr. Acton?
Yeah, that should not be open like that. It was open because of the traffic flow that we had just for the provincials. It was a logjam getting out because of the Tantramar Titans and the amount of volume traffic that we had there. But I'll see that it's closed. It should not be open.
Perfect, thank you. And last question, just back to the exit 506. Do we have any dates around, like you talked about, an implementation plan that staff's going to come forward with? I'm just wondering preliminary dates of when.
Any estimate there, Mr. Burke?
Well, I think the best estimate we could give at this time would be on, perhaps as we enter into our 2019 capital budget process. Certainly, the plan identifies about over $600,000 in public sector improvements. So I think that would be the earliest time at which we could look to talk about some of those bigger ticket items. But certainly over the next few months, we'll be sitting down with Ms. Bigford to talk about some of the implementation strategies that are available through the municipal plan and zoning bylaw.
Okay, so because there were some items in there that there's no cost to, right? So they talk about changing zoning and bylaws and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's something you would do sooner? Like,
Yeah, anything that doesn't have a cost item associated with it
yeah,
is something that we can move on as our time permits.
okay.
But-
So,
But I would make the comment that, just like the presentation tonight on the ambulance, if there is a proposal to be made, it should still come forward, and we will deal with the proposal in that vision framework as opposed to in the municipal framework.
there were just some items within it that suggested there should be some zoning or municipal plan changes, so.
Yeah.
Which may help to attract other businesses, from outside that currently wouldn't because of certain restrictions.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Excuse me. No other questions? Okay, we are at a motion for adjournment. Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Tower. All those in favor? Motion contrary? Motion is carried. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.